Hello students, myself Professor Attarde from Department of Pharmacognosy, MGVS Pharmacy College. Here I welcome you all to this session on investigation of biogenetic studies. The learning outcomes. The students will be going to know about how biogenetic pathways that are investigated by using radioactive isotopes, using stable isotopes, using isolated organ tissues or cells, using grafting techniques and mutant strains. Now, techniques for study of biogenetic pathway. There are four major techniques: tracer technique, use of isolated organs and tissues, grafting methods, and use of mutant strains. Now, tracer techniques. Now, label compounds, they are used to know precursor intermediates. Now, the literal meaning of tracer technique means we are tracing the path from its start point, or we say the precursor, or which metabolite is utilized, which are the intermediate metabolites, and how the final interest of metabolite forms. So the tracing of the whole pathway is done using the isotopes. The isotopes can be stable or it could be radioactive isotopes. They are used for the labeling of presumed precursors. And possible ways to detect these isotopes by various techniques, like these are the detectors, Geiger-Müller counter, autoradiography, or various others. The elements exist with their identical chemical properties but different atomic weights. Means we can see there are stable isotopes, like for hydrogen 2, that is called deuterium, for carbon 13, for nitrogen 15, oxygen 18. And unstable isotopes for hydrogen 3, that is the tritium, for carbon it is 40. Now, purpose of using of different elements for different purpose, that is biological investigation, then carbon and hydrogen isotopes are preferred. If metabolic studies are done for no specific purpose, sulfur, phosphorus, alkali, alkaline, earth methods are used. For proteins, alkaloids, amino acid studies, nitrogen is a better choice than the carbon compound for the labeling purpose, because here nitrogen, how it is involved for the pathways, that is studied. Now, radioactive tracers. The radioactive tracers, here the isotopes are used which is radioactive. They are unstable and that emits some discharges, and they are used for labeling of presumed precursors. So these isotopes can be produced through use of nuclear reactors and accelerator facilities. Now, very important examples you can see over here. This table I took it from Rangari book. So isotope tritium, you can see half-life 12.43 years, its toxicity and its discharge is beta emission. Carbon 14, it's more than 5,000 years, medium toxicity, weak beta emission. For sulfur 35, 87.4 days, beta emission. Phosphorus 32, 14.3 days, hard beta emissions. Iodine 131, 8 days, medium emission, medium toxicity, and it is giving you gamma emission. Now, radioactive isotopes of carbon, there are mass number 10, 11 and 14. So, half-life of carbon 10 is 8.8 seconds, carbon 11 is 20 minutes, carbon 14 is over 5,000 years. So, limitation for use of carbon 10 and carbon 11, because this time is not sufficient for the study, because once the metabolites are labeled with these isotopes, they are introduced inside the system, the lot many metabolic pathway takes place and various intermediate forms, and then finally we isolate. So, it takes a time, and this seconds and minutes is not sufficient for the study. So, selected for this is the carbon 14. Now, if tritium is only radioactive isotope of hydrogen and it is a pure beta emitter of low toxicity with the half-life of about 12.43 years, this tritium gas can be converted to the reagent for the labeling purpose. Carbon 14 commercially available as barium carbonate. Now, criteria for selection of tracers, this should be used in sufficient concentration to withstand the dilution in the long course of metabolism. Because once we introduce the precursors, they get involved in different metabolic pathway. They enter the general metabolic pathway, and they may enter compartment-wise work. So there is a dilution occurs throughout the system. So they must be added in sufficient quantum. So later on you can detect it. then it must retain its position in the molecule in which it is incorporated. Otherwise, it doesn't serve the purpose. Radioactive traces selected depending upon half-life. Just now we have seen the example of carbon. 10 carbon and 11 carbon isotopes, they are not selected because of their half-life is very, very tiny. Specificity for the study of particular metabolite site and non-damaging nature when fed to the system is important for tracer selection. Now, how these labeled precursors they are administered into the system or to the plant body or to the tissue. These are the various methods: root feeding, stem feeding, wick feeding, direct injection method, spray techniques, and floating methods. Now, we'll see this in detail. Root feeding. If root is biosynthetic site, for example, for the tobacco alkaloid formation, this occurs in the root, that is nicotine alkaloid. Then the plants which can grow in hydroponic culture solutions. Hydroponics means the plants which are grown in media other than soil, or we say liquid media or anything. When they are kept in such a system, they are called hydroponic cultures. For them, the root feeding technique can be used for introduction of tracer inside the plant body. Stem feeding. When substrate administered to the cut ends of the stem, and stem must be cut under the water to avoid entry of the air bubbles, and not suitable for the plant which secretes the latex through its stem. Otherwise, it won't allow the entry of the metabolites. Wick feeding or infiltration method. In this, suitable for the plant which are growing in the soil and resin system. So you can work over the live system where plant is growing and you can introduce your metabolites. So one end of the strands of cotton which is threaded through the plant stem, and second end of the strands of cotton which is immersed in labile solution. And alternatively, sometimes flat cut stem means stem it is not cut completely, but the flat is created or it is wounded in such a way, and that flap is just immersed in the labile solution. And direct injection method is suitable for the plant with the hollow stem. For example, in Umbelliferae family, or plant with the capsular fruits like opium poppy, or plant with the hollow receptacles of the inflorescence, you can directly inject the labeled precursor inside the plant body. Next method is the floating method. Here materials like leaf is in the form of the disc or chopped pieces. They floated on the surface of labeled solution. So here either leaves, or we say in case of your rose petals, this can be floated over this, or the pieces of some leaves they can put directly over your tracer solutions. Spray on techniques. Your solution is sprayed directly over the leaf surface, so it gets absorbed. Especially the squalene or steroids get absorbed faster, so they can be administered to check whether they are the intermediates for the formation of different type of metabolites, and the solution which is prepared for the spraying, they are in the non-aqueous phase. So this is all 6 techniques is about administration of precursor inside the plant body. Now precaution is to be taken while administration of this precursors. Negative results must be cautiously interpreted. The precursor may not reach the site, or plant metabolic stages may not be at the phase of synthesis, means you are doing the study, but plant is not under that phase of metabolic process, and your administered precursor is not utilized, you are not getting results, and you say this is not a precursor. But ideally it is a precursor, but plant is not in that phase. Then beta emitting isotopes should be handled with shielding equipments. The workers or the researcher which are involved must be provided with safety vests like rubber gloves, safety eyeglasses, their aprons, headgears, masks. These are important to avoid the damage of this emission to the workers. Now detection and assay of radioisotopes label compounds. Now here radioisotopes which are administered, they undergo the metabolic process, different metabolites forms, different array of compound forms. Now your next process is to isolate the compound and to detect whether that activity is present in that isolated metabolite or not. Now one of the important part is scintillation counting. Scintillation, proper word is the flashing of the lights which come out from that compounds. So for this especially occurred for the tritium and C14 labeled compounds. So various detectors can be used for this labeled compound determination, like Geiger-Müller counter, autoradiography, scintillation counter, liquid scintillation media, gas ionization chamber, Bernstein-Valentine counter, mass spectrometry, NMR spectrometry. Now, first we'll go with the Geiger-Müller counter. Now, first I want to show you how the instrument look. This is the instrument. Over here, this is a tube. The inside of this tube is shown over here. No need to draw this diagram. This is only for understanding the principal purpose. I took this diagram for you. Now, when the compounds, which is your metabolite, which is labeled and which is emitting your emissions, so that ionization radiations, when they pass through this tube that has the gas. Now, inert gases are filled inside this tubing, so that get ionized, and the electric current flows, and that is measured. So here we see the property wise. The Geiger-Müller counter instrument is used for detecting and measuring the ionization radiation, such as alpha and beta particles and gamma rays. Now, this Geiger counter consists of a tube, a sensing elements which detects the radiation, and the processing electronics which displays the results. The basic working, the inert gas such as helium, neon, argon, they are filled inside this Müller tube at low pressure, to which this high voltage is applied. So, tube briefly conducts electric charge when particles or photon of incident radiation makes the gas conductive by ionization. So, from your metabolites, when ionization comes because of emission, these particles, they get ionized, or we say these ions get attracted to electrodes and the electric current flows. So, this is about Geiger-Müller counter as a detector. This is the instrument, this tube which is filled with inert gas, and high electric voltage is applied, and thus when it falls, this gets ionized and electric current falls, and you can see the readings and all this. So, this is one of the instruments. Second is the detection by scintillation counter. Scintillation means the process of state of emitting the flashes of light. In physics, a small flash of visible or ultraviolet light which is emitted by fluorescence in a phosphor when struck by a charged particle or a high energy photon. So, the method involves admixture of radio-labeled metabolites with the scintillator containing solution or cocktail. A measurement of photons which are emitted by a complex series of events. So, whatever scintillation occurs, this is measured by a photomultiplier tube. Now, after correcting the quenching and background radiation, the values are directly correlated with the concentration of metabolites in a given solution. So, you can correlate how much is the concentration of radioactivity through this. So, the instrument is like this. Here you can have the handling devices below this lid. You can put your metabolite along with your scintillation fluid, and ideally this is the diagrammatic presentation where your incident photons that passes through your scintillator, which is a light photons which is emitted, or this is the flash of light, might be visible or UV light that pass through this photomultiplier tube. You can see how this get multiplied through these various diodes. You can see once it falls upon each other and how it goes on multiplying throughout, and it gets converted to the electric current. So, we'll see again the scintillation counter is an instrument for detecting and measuring the ionization radiation by using excitation effect of incident radiation. Means this excitation occurs of the scintillator because of incident photon. So, this excitation effect of incident radiation on a scintillating material and detecting the resultant light pulses. So, it consists of scintillator which generates photons. In response to incident radiation, a sensitive photodetectors which converts the light to an electric signal and electronics to process this signal. In liquid scintillation counter, a liquid scintillation media consists of solvent in which excitation occurs. Fluorescent material emits the light to activate the photomultiplier. So, in short, you have your material in contact with your scintillator fluid or gel or whatever it is. It gives rise to the flash of light in form of photons. In photomultiplier tube, this gets multiplied because your whatever tiny light comes out, it should be magnified, and then it is converted to the electric signal which you can directly connect with the concentration process. So, this is the second detector. Third is the autoradiography. It's like your X-ray, where you are holding your specimen directly in contact with film, which is nothing like your X-ray sensitive film. So here, sometime a gel form or emulsion can be poured over the specimen. So it is an important technique for location of radioactive isotopes in a biological system. You directly make a whole system. You can sketch where your metabolite is present in the tissue. You can locate directly by taking its photo like an X-ray. So use for the suitable photographic emulsions such as silver bromide crystal in a gel or suspension in the form of X-ray sensitive film, it is used. The specimen is kept in contact for specific period and the results correlated on the basis of darkening of X-ray sensitive film. The technique gives the distribution pattern of labeled radioisotopes in the specimen. The technique can be applied to the morphological part as well as to the microscopical section. You can put your sections over this film, and also you can locate. In contact method, the specimen photographic films are held in contact during the period of exposure. Now, if it is a liquid gel or emulsion, it can be directly poured even over the specimen. So this is the 3 detectors we are just gone over through. Now, methods of tracer studies. How, in which way or with the strategies of study of these tracer studies. So precursor product sequence is the first, second is the competitive fading, third is the sequential analysis. Now precursor product sequence, with the name you can see precursor is a starter, product is your last product. It's very important tool, most commonly used. Labeled precursors means you are presuming and that is labeled, this is generated and fed to the system. Finally, constituents are isolated and is purified and you are detecting. Activity is determined by various detectors, just we had gone through the list. The radioactivity in product is not sufficient proof of pathway. Why it is so? Because single labeling, if you are doing, your precursor get diluted throughout the system, it may enter through different metabolic pathway and final products which comes out maybe through some combination. So it may not be a true result. So that's for reasons the double or triple labeling experiments must be performed. Now case study for this, you can see the amino acid lysine. It is labeled as 2 number carbon. Here you can see 14 C14 and a tritium is labeled at the 6 number carbon. So this lysine amino acid is assumed as presumed your precursor in sedum species for the formation of alkaloid sedamine. So sedamine alkaloid is C5N unit derived from lysine. It is presumed. C5 means carbon 5. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This carbon and nitrogen. This is derived from this lysine, and so labeling is done like this. And when it is final product is isolated, it is checked. There is no loss of tritium. It is there, and only one carbon atom of alkaloid is labeled. That is also there. So indicating the involvement of non-labeled nitrogen for this ring formation purpose. So this is a simple experiment studied how lysine is involved. This is a precursor and this is your product. Then second case study in the lysine involvement for the formation of alkaloid N-abscin in Nicotiana glauca species, which is your tobacco plant. So here lysine double label to prove which nitrogen is involved for the piperidine ring formation. So piperidine ring is this piperidine ring. 2 rings are there in N-abscin. So pyridine and piperidine. So in this, how this nitrogen or this nitrogen is involved. So alternative nitrogens are labeled. So we can see here in this case study lysine, where 2 number carbon is labeled. You can see this one, and here eta 15 nitrogen here, this is labeled, and when compound isolated, it shows both label is there in the N-abscin, means final product. And second, where alpha nitrogen is labeled, means this nitrogen. So this too is labeled, and when product isolated, it shows only one carbon label, no label over nitrogen, means this nitrogen is not involved for the ring closure, but this eta nitrogen is involved. That is proved by double labeling. So this is a case study for Nicotiana glaucospecies for the involvement of the lysine for the piperidine ring formation. Second method, competitive feeding. Competitive feeding experiments are of great value. Here we determine which intermediates are involved. Your A may be passing through B and then giving you C, or it may be passing through B dash, it may be giving this type of compound and then forming C. So here the intermediates, they are labeled in the method, both B and B dash. They are separately fed with A, means one system will receive A and B, one system will receive A and B dash, and checked where activity is retained in C, and that set the path. So if activity is observed with B dash, so path will be A dash, B dash, C, or if activity is seen with the B, then path will be this. Now case study is done for tyrosine involvement for formation of phenylpyruvic acid, means here the label is done for tyrosine with this carbon, whether it is passing with the DOPA formation or it is directly get converted, that is studied in this path in the competitive feeding. So whether it is following this path or whether this is following second path. So competitive feeding experiments observed and intermediate DOPA is also labeled and seen, but it is shown that final result that 3,4-dihydroxyphenylpyruvic acid forms directly from tyrosine without formation, without involvement of DOPA, or we say that is your 3,4-dihydroxyphenylalanine is not involved. It is not showing any, because if it is labeled and introduced, it doesn't show any labeling of DOPA inside its final product. Therefore, it shows tyrosine is directly converted to this, and this DOPA formation pathway is not involved. Third method is the sequential analysis method. The method of investigation of with C14, here the plant is grown into the atmosphere of carbon dioxide which is labeled with carbon C14. So analysis of the plant is given with the time interval, means after some time the products are just isolated. After we say 30 minutes, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, different metabolites, they are isolated in sequence. Here Mentha piperta species is used, where plant is allowed to grow in carbon dioxide environment where it is labeled with carbon 14 for 5 minutes, and whatever compound they are isolated with sequence shows the presence of piperitone as the first, later on menthone, and then menthol. So it shows that initial piperitone forms, then menthone forms, then menthol forms at the end. So in sequence the product found, so that sets the path how they form in particular manner inside the plant body. So that is a case study in Mentha piperta species. So that is the use of tracer isotopes, your radioactive tracer isotopes. Similar manner, stable isotopes can be used by the same methods, and method of introduction, detection can be done with the mass spectrometry and NMR spectrometry. In NMR spectroscopy, mainly carbon 13 most possible to detect, because if you are labeling your acetates, acetate is the most presumed precursor for most of the pathway, which is labeled with carbon 13. Sometimes propionate can be labeled, methionine can be labeled. Then detection of metabolite is done with this NMR. NMR spectroscopy with C13 gives the idea about the basic backbone structure of the metabolites, and the quick results can be interpreted with this. Even the double labeled acetate are used, that is, we know acetate is a CH3COH, so both carbon is labeled, and product can be assumed to derive from intake acetate unit. So that study can be done with the NMR spectroscopy along with the stable isotopes. Now this is all about use of isotopes for the study of your pathways or investigation or elucidation of biogenetic pathways. Second method is the use of isolated organs, tissues and cells. So cultures of organs, tissue, cells which are grown under aseptic condition can be used. So instead of using the whole plant, you are using it in part. And use of feeding experiments can be done similar manner. You are introducing your labels, metabolites in that aseptic media as a precursors, and you are isolating your metabolites and you are detecting. So parenchyma tissues of various plant parts take up the labeled precursor. Later on analysis gives the information about the site of synthesis. Now which tissues to be used? You can use isolated roots, shoots, leaves. This can be performed in sterile media. For tobacco, isolated root experiments greatly helps because alkaloid is they are usually forms in the root of this tobacco plant, so that should be used. So accordingly, which site is the biosynthetic parts you can use. The isolated root extensively used for the elucidation of biogenetic pathway for tropane group of alkaloids in roots, especially in Solanaceae family. If you are using a petal disc, especially for the rose plants, this is a path, or this is a site where your volatile oil generates. So to elucidate the pathway of essential oil components of rose oil, you must use the petal disc. So according to that, they are allowed to be work in a sterile media with the presumed precursor you are entering, you are isolating the final products and you are detecting by various means. So that is the use of isolated organs, tissues and cells. Next, grafts. Now what is graft and how it helps? The basics of grafts, two cut surface of different but closely related plants, they are placed together. So to unite and further grow together. The major plant known as stalk and the minor or cut form of other part is scion or graft. So important, mainly it is done for the crop improvisation, quality, quantity and species variation. But how it is useful here, that we'll see. Here grafting has considerable utility in the biosynthetic study for elucidation of pathway. Study is done mainly for the Solanaceae family such as Nicotiana and Datura. Nicotiana for the tobacco alkaloids, Datura for the tropane alkaloids. We'll see how the scions means minor part of the tomato, but is grafted on the stalk means of Datura, which is the parent or which is the major plant, that shows the accumulation of tropane alkaloid. Now Datura, that is belong to Solanaceae family, and your main alkaloid forms under this is the tropane group of alkaloid, and the root is the basic site where alkaloid forms. So whether the statement is true or not, that we are checking with this. So if Datura is intact, its roots are there, and only tomato scions is grafted, it shows the accumulation of tropane alkaloid. In contrast, when scions of Datura grafted on stalk of tomato, it do not show production of tropane alkaloid. Or if it shows traces, that is again from your that scions, whatever it is, that only it is there. Or if the stalk of tomato means the parent is not synthesizing, so there is no increase in this tropane alkaloid form. So conclusion is that major site for biogenesis of tropane alkaloid is the root, but no other part of Datura. So that is about how grafting helps to judge the metabolic site for the formation. So that is the third technique. Now last technique is the mutant strain techniques. The mutants, they are produced in lower species, for example in fungi and microbes. The mutant strains, they lack one or other enzymes. So metabolic pathway get affected to form the secondary metabolites. Means whatever pathway is there, it gets stuck, it gets halt to its particular steps. At intermediate level, it stops because it lacks the enzyme. So when artificial supply is given from outside, it restores the mechanism. So this halt is important for us to know that which is the intermediate, or at which point it's stuck, and then we can determine, yes, this is your intermediate. So example or case study wise, this is studied with the Claviceps purpurea. This is a fungus which infects the ray plant. A ray plant is like your wheat plant. They are the grains which are used for the food purpose, and this fungus, when in fact it leads to the formation, it goes through the various stages of fungal growth, and one step comes which is called sclerotia, which is the dormant stage of this fungus. At this stage, we isolate this fungus, and which is used for the isolation of different range of ergot alkaloids. This Claviceps purpurea is also called as ergot. So these alkaloids has a greater value in your this pharmacological uses, mainly in that is used, and how this mutant strains of this is used to check this process, that it lacks some enzymes and produce number of amino acid of diverse nature. And ray plant, when it is inoculated with this mutant strains of Claviceps purpurea, the sclerotia produced at dormant stage shows the blockage of biogenetic pathway and accumulation of specific alkaloids or intermediates. That it get accumulate at this formation of chenoclavin 1 and its aldehyde derivatives. At this step, the process get halt. So blockage for the formation of ergoclavin formation from this chenoclavin 1. This ergoclavin further gives rise to the various type of ergot alkaloids. So it gets stuck. So if ergoclavin and other intermediates are supplied artificially, then restores the pathway for the formation of final ergot alkaloid, that is ergotamine and its derivative. So this ergotamine and its derivatives are of very great importance in obstetric science. Mainly in the obstetric science it is of great value and they are used for that purpose. Now here, as it lacks the enzyme, this fungus, it cannot lead direct formation of this sclerotia state to the formation of this ergotamine, but it comes to the pathway till chenoclavin and its various forms. It does not form the ergoclavin and it stops. But from artificial you are giving ergoclavin, if it is available ready-made, further path sets because other enzymes are there and it leads to the formation of ergotamine. Means chenoclavin is the intermediate part of this process is proved by using mutant strains. So I took this all from reference Trizanivans and Rangari. Thank you. Wish you happy learning.